FDA Commissioner Dr. Hahn says politics did not play a role in the decision to give doctors the go-ahead for a possible coronavirus treatment. The FDA issued an emergency use authorization for a convalescent plasma treatment Sunday. It uses convalescent plasma from coronavirus survivors that contains antibodies to treat patients battling COVID-19. The therapy has shown potential, but research is still underway.
Now, this announcement came just one day after President Trump tweeted this: the deep state, or whoever over at the FDA, is making it very difficult for drug companies to get people in order to test the vaccines and the therapeutics. Obviously, they are hoping to delay the answer until after November 3rd, Election Day. Dr. Hahn joins us now for an interview that you'll see only on CBS This Morning. Dr. Hahn, it's good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm thinking it's been a
Good morning, Gail. Really appreciate the opportunity.
You know, we're really glad you're here, sir.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
You know, I'm thinking it's been a really head-spinning 48 hours for you, starting with that tweet where the president seemed to be taking your agency to task, cut to you standing next to the president announcing this breakthrough treatment and emergency authorization of plasma treatment that many people have been using, at least 70,000 people have been using. So some people say the optics either look like politics or pressure. What do you say about that?
So first thing I'd like to say is that I personally could have done a better job and should have done a better job at that press conference explaining what the data show regarding convalescent plasma. And I can assure the American people that this decision was made based upon sound science and data. We have shown, or the Mayo Clinic Convalescent Plasma Program has shown, that there are promising efficacy data as well as safety associated with plasma. As you mentioned, over 70,000 Americans were treated on this program. Excuse me. And so these data totally support the emergency use authorization that we issued. And we've been working on this for 3 or 4 weeks, and we're really waiting for additional validation data. But as you pointed out, I think in the initial portion of this program, we're going to continue to get data. And as we've done with any other authorization, we will update that decision as new data come. But the professionals and the scientists at FDA independently made this decision, and I completely support them. I think it's a good one for American patients and providers.
But I think the problem is, or the issue, Dr. Hahn, is that it was made the day before the Republican convention. So people say the timing seems a little coinky-dink. And you're saying, no, there's no need to think that there's anything awry here, is what you're saying.
So the timing was totally based on when we got the data. You probably know that there were reports in the media that we've had some back and forth with external stakeholders, folks at the NIH, but also internally, about what data we needed to see to justify an emergency use authorization. That, combined with the fact that the Mayo Clinic Expanded Access Program was timed to end this week, we felt that having the additional data, which we received last week and early this weekend, and having the time to analyze it, plus the fact that we wanted to maintain availability of plasma for patients and doctors, that led to the timing of this weekend. And those are the facts, Gail.
All right. The other thing that's raising a couple of eyebrows is that at that announcement, the president and yourself announced that it was reducing deaths by 35%. Top scientists today are wondering where you got that data from. How does that square?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and we're putting out additional information to support the emergency use authorization. So the way this works is that we looked at the Mayo Clinic data, and the Mayo Clinic identified a group of patients, certain patients that it looked like this benefited the most, that the antibodies benefited them the most. We asked for additional validation data that came in, which supported that, meaning that comparing those patients who got high concentrations of antibody versus those that got low concentrations of antibodies. When you look at those data, the survival benefit between those two groups was a relative benefit of 35%. And as I mentioned, I could have done a better job of explaining that at the press conference yesterday.
Was the authorization given, Dr. Hahn, before the clinical trials had taken place? There's some concern about that as well.
So Yeah, there's ongoing clinical trials. Unfortunately, they're not accruing like we'd like them to. And of course, FDA completely supports clinical trial performance because at the end of the day, clinical trials, particularly randomized clinical trials, provide gold standard information. But just let me make this clear, Gail. The data that we need, which is a risk-benefit assessment for an emergency use authorization, were met by the data that we received and that we have. And the other advantage of this is that it allows patients to have access to it while those trials are accruing. Last point I'd like to make, Gail, is that there's a great demand for this. Doctors are ordering this for patients around the country. And Americans who've recovered from COVID-19, it would be absolutely great for them to consider donating plasma to meet that demand.
It's also frightening, Dr. Hahn, that we just heard on the news this morning that someone who had COVID-19, that it's come back again. How concerned should we be about that?
So, Gail, as you probably know, throughout this pandemic, we've been learning a lot about the disease. We still continue to believe that the immunity that one has is long-lasting, but those data still aren't completely in, and we have to follow patients to figure out how long the immunity lasts. And I think there's a lot of data coming in about that. So I think the jury's still out with respect to that from a science and medicine point of view.
I know. Steve, there seems to be a lot of jury still out when it comes to this disease. Is the relationship with you and the president okay? He seemed to take a couple of pot shots at you from time to time. Do you think you have his support?
I feel like I enjoy a very good relationship with the president. I spoke to him several times this weekend. And, you know, he wants us to be focused on the urgency of the situation and moving things forward. And I have great faith in the 17,000 FDA employees who are terrific scientists, doctors, and nurses that we're going to do that and move it forward for the American people. That's our promise to them.
All right, Dr. Hahn, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. I know you've got a lot on your plate.
Thank you, Gail.
We'll talk to you another time, I'm sure.